I think the main thing on tomato and diagnosing, I mean, even though we're on the second series, there are a lot of different ones out there, a lot of different specific bacteriums and viruses, and going back to the fungus, even though there's a lot of different ones, the controls are pretty similar. Pretty similar. So, and I think you'll see this after today that, you kind of have some similarities, but there is some true differences between what we talked about with a fungus and then what we're going to be talking about with a bacteria and viruses.
Right.
So.
Well, if nothing else, you'll know what's terminal
yeah, that's right.
for your
That's
plant,
right.
and what you can kind of weather and how to and still get some fruit off your plant, which is the big thing. Is it done, or can I still keep going?
That's right. Or scouting again. You're going to keep scouting, and if you start seeing some spots, pick that leaf off. Go back back to the stem and pick that leaf off to see, if it's something just on the outside, maybe you can get it out of there and it won't spread anymore. So I mean, just precautionary type stuff also.
Right. So, wash your hands for 20 seconds.
no.
Try and stay healthy.
That's
Keep your
right.
plant healthy.
That's right.
So,
but yeah, before we get into anything, I think we got to talk about the disease triangle first.
Yeah.
And disease triangle we hit last time, and we'll hit every time because it is important. To make a disease, to create a diseased plant, you have to have three things. You have to have a susceptible host. Right. So a plant that is susceptible to that bacteria or that fungus. Right. You have to have a virulent pathogen, a pathogen that will attack, and then you have to have the proper environment. So with all three of those things, then you have disease. If you can slow down any one of those three things, then that's going to cause less disease in the end. So it's kind of simplified, but then again, it's a little more complicated than that.
But it's true though. If like for example, the fungal diseases thrive in hot, humid, wet conditions. So if you can keep your plants not wet,
correct,
and keep that splashing off there, you'll minimize your chance. So it's very true. It's a simple little way to remember it all, but it's true.
And it works. And I mean, it just, you dry your plant out, water at the right time, put that mulch down we talked about last time. That's again going to be important as well. Mulching that where your rain or your water splash off the leaf doesn't draw back up that dirt or that pathogen in that soil. I said dirt, no, in that soil that has that pathogen. Then if it's back on those leaves, then we're going to have more risk for disease. So mulch that, keep that clean, that splash clean, I guess.
Right. So
jump in.
First one we're talking about is bacterial spot. There's a speck in a spot. The first one is a spot.
Spot, and in the fact sheets they're kind of the same way. They're side by side. But bacterial spot comes along. I noticed this middle season, later season. But I think the main thing, Tom, on this is the actual. Looks like just kind of a sandblast of
buckshot
these,
or something.
Of these little bitty spots. Kind of not quite a 1/16 of an inch, but they're just really small. And you'll also notice yellowing as it progresses. You may see these earlier in that leaf, and then as it progresses, it's going to yellow out some of those inner margins or what. Right. But that photo is a pretty good explanation. The books say that it's introduced by seeds that have this bacteria on them,
or a transplant,
from the nursery.
Right.
But you don't know. I mean, if you're buying,
bring it home, you don't know that.
If you're buying seeds, hopefully you're buying from a good source. Or transplants, hopefully you're buying a clean transplant from a good source and doesn't have a lot of this bacteria in it already. So, that's one thing to kind of look for.
Well, and it's spread, I guess, rain, like we mentioned, rain helps spread it. Like you getting in there and working around it, and you can physically brush up against it, move it, spread it itself. Yeah. So,
and any wounds, like insects that pierce, they can spread, or they open that wound and susceptible to other things as well. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the best leaf that I know to explain. And then the fruit up here also will have this kind of indented specks spots as well. Right. And from a standpoint that it's going to be green. gonna attack greener fruit earlier in the season, and then it may just sit there, and then as it ripens, it'll just kind of ripen kind of oddly. So if you notice that early on, pick it off, and if it gets too bad, I'd probably say just pull that plant. It's gonna kind of be the negative on it.
Well, it's not something that looks very appetizing to me. That would be a tomato I would avoid.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not gonna, it'll taste fine, but you know, and if we let it go on in the ripening and it gets deeper and deeper, those spots, then you may have to end up cutting more out than what you have. So probably not a good plant, definitely not a sellable tomato on that. But you know, I think we say it's gonna be the yellowing. I mentioned the yellowing following the scorch. So as we go on, we start noticing this leaf kind of dying at the edges, and that's pretty common on a lot of these, and this one's just the case too. So it's just the disease has been there that long and it's progressing, and that, you know, once those leaves start turning yellow, and then they'll start dying and turning brown, and then die. So that's kind of the progression of it.
Well, and this is another one that starts at the bottom up.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it does.
Bottom and just kind of
work its way up. A lot of them do. A lot of them do, because those are the older leaves. They're lower to the ground where the splash happens. So I mean, there's a few things happening there. But yeah, but control of these is not an easy thing. If we are putting down some fungicides, copper sometime can have some. If we're early enough in the stage of this, a copper fungicide will help kind of suppress it a little bit. So it may slow it down. I think the plant's gonna, once it's there, it's gonna attack it. But if we need to slow it down just enough to get some fruit ripened, then it's a possibility.
And then if you do have a problem with one of these, all of them really, then crop rotation.
Yeah, I mean,
just
need to move it over to another part of the garden if you have that ability. If you have that ability.
Because once it's there, it's going to be harder to get away.
Yeah, so that's Bacterial Spot. Let's sneak to Speck, because they're similar. This is Bacterial Speck. So, you know, as you can tell on the photos, there's not much difference on these. You know, as far as just looking at them, you're still going to, they're not going to have the shotgun specks, spots that we did prior to, but it still will have those brown areas, dying areas on this particular disease. But again, they're both bacterial and they're very similar. They just are a different bacteria that is attacking, so we call them different.
Speck versus spot. Now earlier when we were talking, you mentioned that as these specks are there and time goes on, they can kind of maybe start to rot and get another problem.
Correct. So, you know, anytime we break the skin or the seal, whether it's that insect that I was talking about or this disease or this bacteria damage that is, so if it progresses and it starts cracking, then another disease can get in and start rotting. You know, we think fungal diseases at that point. Once we get enough sugars in that fruit for those diseases to start, or those fungus to start attacking, once that gets in, they're going to feed off those sugars and really rot that tomato real quick.
So you're going to be fighting double battles.
Double all along. But if we're on a spray schedule, that'll help slow it down anyway. And you know, if you get these, and you know, in almost all throughout the plant, an individual plant, just pull that thing up. Hopefully you've got a row of them that, you know, the whole row is not necessarily going to get attacked. But if they start showing enough symptoms, pull them out of there and let them others go and take off.
You don't want it to spread.
Yeah.
Just
And again, control copper. If you have, you know, add copper to, you know, if you're starting to see a little more and more of these, add some of that copper. But be careful. Remember, we've talked about copper burning in the summertime when it's hot. So just be careful about that. Spraying, you know, maybe in the evening or, you know, when it's cooler week or something, if we have that luxury. But copper can help slow down bacteria a little bit more than the other fungicides will.
Well, and that's not all. We got another one. This bacterial canker.
And another one. So, you know, a canker, when we say canker, I think about things on stems, you know, whether it's swellings of stems or oozing of stems. And this is really no different either. But, you know, I think this particular one, the fruit, I don't know if I've identified it as a bacterial canker on the fruit because it looks very similar, but you're looking for those halos, you know.
that whitish halo
around the outside,
which is different than the others. They just have black spots.
Yeah, and then this particular one, the treatments. There's just not a lot of treatments either. I mean, copper possibly, but the plant itself, as you can see on the left, is it's gonna be more progressed, a little faster, and then again you may see some cankers on the stem, but that's if you've left it out there for quite a while. But bacterial wilt, or bacterial canker, bacterial speck, and bacterial spot, they're all kind of the bacterial problems. We'll have a few more bacterial issues, but those are the three major ones that kind of look the same. So you're talking copper, and then if the plant's bad enough, get it out of there.
Well, and like on this one, can't you cut the stem, and if it's discolored in there?
Yeah. Oh, there is. Yeah, that's correct. So you can cut it. You can cut it lengthwise and see if it's kind of reddish or even white, just something odd color.
And
so
then that's a for sure.
And then that's a guarantee. If it's kind of pithy or whitey or whatever it is in there, then whitey. Whatever it is in there, if it's different looking, then yeah, it could be a bacterial canker.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
But again, see, so before you go, this one's a challenge. These three are a challenge because they're very, very similar. Mm-hmm. And we can send them to the labs and get a confirmation, but the treatments are very, very close as well. So whether you have those three, one of three, or maybe two or three, or even all of them, if you've got them, and if the disease has progressed far enough, probably again, like I've said, probably get them out of there. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Take an aspirin for your headache because you lost all your tomato plants.
Unfortunately.
Well, we got one more. We're not done. We got the bacterial wilt, and this one just kind of takes it out, and it's done.
This is pretty quick, and again, I mean, you may have a row, and this one is one where you may have 3 or 4 in a row that get attacked because it's all right in there, and this bacteria lives in the soil. So once it's in that soil, this is a hard one to get out of the soil. So definitely on this one, a rotation is probably needed on this. But again, you have a row, and you may have 2 or 3 in a row that get attacked, and it's pretty quick, pretty rapid. Not too much yellowing or spotting, just pretty much instantly go to wilting. Right. And so that's again bacterial wilt. Not much you can do on this one. Not much.
Well, you mentioned too, there's a pretty interesting way to identify it for sure. You cut off a stem.
Yep.
And put it in water.
Yep. So it's an oozing. It's a bacterial ooze, is what it's called. So you'd take say this top of this plant here, and you'd cut it off, and then you'd just suspend it in a cup of water. Right. And then what it is, that bacteria is going to release out through that xylem or phloem. Release that out, and you'll see an ooze. So it's going to be a cloudy ooze. Right. And if you've got that after 10, 20 minutes, more than likely you do have bacterial wilt. And so yeah, nothing. That's a good way to identify it.
Surefire sign and a surefire way to lose a cup.
You're not going to drink after that cup out of there.
That cup is done.
But you got a plant like this, and of course, once you get to this point, it's too late. But keep an eye on them. They're gonna mimic some other things as well. Like we've got some natural leaf curl that we have. It could do that, but if it's earlier on in the season, before June or July, and this happens, more than likely this is what it's gonna be, and pull it out.
Well, and it's probably easy to confuse, at least initially, because our tomato plants in the summer, it's super hot outside. By the end of the day, they're kind of looking a little puny. But if you water them and they perk back up, it's not this.
Yeah, it's not going to be that. Yeah.
Because this won't perk back up.
No, this one's pretty much gone. So you're going to have to clean that soil up. Whether we'll talk about solarization later on. Right. But if you got this year after year, you probably need to either get that soil out or let it rest for a couple years, planting something else. Yep.
All right, so that's the big ones as far as bacteria is concerned. Now we'll move on to virus. This Alfalfa Mosaic virus. And I guess the reason I call it alfalfa is because, like out in the field, it tends to happen next to alfalfa crops. The it migrates.
Moves
on the
over.
insects that move over. Not
Yeah.
so much here in town, but we still can because there's other insects.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. What type of insect is it?
So viruses, leafhopper is
Leafhopper?
one of the more common ones. So they're real small, and you may see them in your garden, you know, a green leafhopper, but the leafhoppers are host specific.
Right.
So some of them that may like alfalfa may not mind a little bit of tomatoes. So they may feed on the alfalfa and jump over to the tomato plants. But there's a lot of other vectors, you know, a lot of other insects that will spread it, but we think of leafhoppers being the most. They're one that is going to spread viruses. You know, the rosette, that's kind of a mite, but there's some leafhoppers in there that can spread some viruses well. So, you know, you're taking one insect, he's feeding on a virus plant, then he's jumping over to another one and then spreading that virus out. So that's definitely an issue. But viruses are kind of interesting. There's no control for them.
Well, just like us, we get a virus, we just got to tough it out, but they can't really tough it out.
It's harder for them to tough it out. I mean, you hear witch's broom or, you know, other, you know, the rosette is a virus. So what viruses do is just cause the plant to, you know, do various things, various different things. And
Unusual and strange growth, like the darkening
the
and
cracking,
and the way those leaves look, they're all kind of
yeah,
multicolored.
Yeah, or you know, you get concentric patterns on that. I mean, there's really, if you Google and look at virus tomatoes, there's so many different cool patterns out there that these odd viruses will cause. Not necessarily hurting the fruit or anything, but you know, in this case, yes, it will.
I'm not eating it.
But there's just a lot of different viruses out there, and I don't want to lump them all together, but it's easier to do that because of the numerous different ones that we have. But alfalfa one, again, we've talked about spreading by insects. The patterns, we've talked about that, but we get tobacco, Mosaic, which you can spread by smoking or nicotine. The tobacco leaf, you know, tobacco cigars or, you know, nicotine itself, that will spread it. So a lot of different viruses out there, and not much we can do about them. Curly top is another one that we have.
Curly top here.
You have that, yeah. So, you know, this one looks very similar to that other one that we talked about, bacterial wilt, but it doesn't have any lesions on the leaves. It just kind of looks like it's just going to start curling up at the top, and then eventually it'll be brown, but it doesn't get brown until the end of its stages. But curly top beet virus is one, and it's kind of odd. I've seen some fields of tomatoes, and you'll see hot spots. You know, maybe 20 foot by 20 foot, where that you know, that leafhopper landed and spread, and then maybe spread, and so you just get hot spots, and it's kind of interesting in a field, and especially from looking above, you just see these dead spots. And so that's what you're going to see, and it may not necessarily be at the edge of the field. They may have flew over to the middle of it or something. So I've seen a lot of neat, I'm going to call neat viruses in fields.
It's interesting. Like on this one, the veins there kind of turn purple.
Kind of have that dark purple appearance, and so it's just kind of an odd one. We can test for this, you know, on a homeowner that may have one or two plants, not really need to send that to campus. But for a grower, you know, where he's growing, you know, 2 or 3 acres of these, and we have some problems, it'd be good to identify, isolate which one that is. That way we can attack it if there is anything to do.
Well, they want to salvage the rest of their crop.
That's right. They've got a lot of crop around there that they still have to keep fresh. So now it's viruses are kind of an interesting challenge, but we just kind of live with them.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and then we move on away from that to our nematodes, which I think are very interesting little creatures.
Yeah,
these microscopically
are kind of stepchilds here. They're not really viruses, bacteria, fungal, or, you know, they're not really insects. So what these are microscopic worms, and I bet everybody's came across them if they've grown tomatoes. And so if you get a tomato at the end of the season, you say, this was a dog plant, it looks terrible, it didn't do very much. You pull it up and you get nodules on the roots.
Right.
And this particular one is a root knot nematode, called that for that reason.
Obvious reason.
Because what happens, that nematode, it's a soil-borne microscopic worm. And it gets in the plant cells through, openings, whether it's the stomata or, cracks or anything, or an insect can spread a nematode as well. But a root knot nematode is a soil-borne nematode that will, over time, the population will get big enough and we'll get symptoms. And symptoms of root knot is the knotted roots, the roots that have the nodules on them, and stunted growth, where that root's not able to pull up any nutrients or moisture at all.
Right.
Maybe a little, but just maybe enough to keep it alive.
It doesn't look like a healthy root.
It's not going to thrive at all. So you get something this bad, or you get a few nodules in there, then more than likely you're going to need to rotate that crop. You're going to need to get that out of there.
Crop rotation can minimize, because if you've got it and you keep planting the same thing, that population is going to grow.
Just gets
and grow
bigger
and grow.
bigger each year. Right. So 3 or 4 years may be about all you can do for the nematodes. And then you will have to either get that soil out, or you will have to let that area rest for probably multiple years. Probably a year is not going to be enough, because starving them out is going to take longer than a year, 6 months to a year.
So one of the options we hear about for this is soil solarization. Is that effective? Or?
So yeah, solarization is one where we put down some sort of plastic, usually a black plastic or a clear plastic, where it absorbs the heat and then heats the ground up.
With no crops.
With no crops, it's just a blank. Put that plastic down and heat that soil up that way. Mixed results. Couple reasons is it doesn't do much good in the wintertime, because we just don't have enough sun to heat it up enough.
Right.
Be a perfect time growing wise for us to do that, but it just doesn't work. We need to keep it moist underneath. So it's almost best to have a drip irrigation underneath it to keep it moist, where it'll hold that heat in longer.
Right.
Something I didn't think about, but that's true. That water will hold that heat. It'll hold that soil. It'll keep that soil warmer longer if it's moist. Right. But the idea, we've got to get that sun heated down. We've got to get that temperature up to enough to kill those nematodes. I'd have to go back. I should have looked up what that number is, but you've got to get it up there, and you've got to hold it for a certain length of time.
And it's got to be for an extended period of time. It sounds like you're basically going to take a year off.
That's right.
From your crop.
That's
put
right.
it down and leave it.
Yeah. No, if you wanted to do the black plastic, that's fine. Do it in July and August. Hopefully, you don't have you'd have to do it to one where you don't have tomatoes, but definitely needs to be done in the summertime to be effective. Or simple rotation,
plant your tomatoes somewhere else.
Yeah, plant them somewhere, and then plant some winter crops. Till those winter crops in, like cover crops like wheat, or rye. Rye's pretty easy to find. Clover's okay. I like the grasses if you've got nematodes, because those root knots don't necessarily survive on grass roots. So that's a good option to do there.
Right.
But yeah, if you've got crap in your soil, I don't know how else to say it, just whether it's bacteria, some fungus, or these nematodes, best thing to do, hands down, be rotate them out, and hopefully take a year off, plant something different, till that green manure in, and you should start seeing less and less problems.
Are there resistant varieties?
On some of these, like the bacterial wilt, I don't believe there is.
But like the nematodes.
But the nematodes, they will have an N on that, and that may be, or a root knot nematode. I don't remember the code on that, but they will be specific on those. And if you do know that it's a root knot, you can pick out some that are resistant to that nematode, and that's an option too. Right. Haven't had as much luck with that. But I mean, it's there, and the resistance is there. So
well, it's called resistance, not cure.
That's it.
It's resistance.
It's not a total control.
Higher resistant. If you have a huge problem, you're probably still going to have a problem.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, these nematodes are again a challenge. But simply let it take a break for a while, and jump right back in. You should be fine.